But now it's 9:10, and I'm really glad to present you research that we did over the last few years that now is gathered into one full presentation. So I will be opening this conference talking about the state of the API industry. So if you have any comments, questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I will be glad to answer them along the way. And let's start about like how let's say we've tried to describe and map the API industry. A little bit about me. My name is Mehdi Medjaoui. I'm the founder and chairman of Apidays. You can follow me on Twitter at Medjaoui, WII, to have some API-related content and news that I share all the time. This is my latest publications, Continuous API Management, a book to know how to continuously manage APIs. We also have a publication with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission about API for governments, why, what, and how, and also a latest report about GDPR data portability, the forgotten right. When there is no API and just but we want to share data, we've seen that actually it doesn't work. It doesn't really work well. Just to say also some announcement, the book Continuous API Management second edition had just been launched 2 weeks ago. So we'll have a dedicated session this afternoon based on this book with all the co-authors. So here, the landscape we finally have been able to build. It took some time to gather all these tools. We now have more than 1,020 tools that we have identified as the API industry landscape, and we try to gather all the data on all these tools, and we have gathered them into a specific report. Let's see a quick demo about how it is. So I will just go on the Apidays landscape directly live, and you will be able to see. So if you go on API landscape.apiscene.io or media platform, you will be able to browse this landscape. You will be able to browse this landscape. Again, right after I will explain you how it is, how it works, what are the numbers we've gathered. But let's say you will be able to browse all the 1,021 elements. You will see that they are categorized into, on the left, larger sections like API Lifecycle Platforms, Backend building tools, business process as an API, integration platform as a service, or vertical API abstractions. And for each of these large segmentation, we have subsections like API Management Gateway, API Consulting, Identity and Management, API Design Documentation, Security, Testing, whatever, Developer Portals, Streaming, Event Architecture. So we really try to gather all of them. And the good news is that if you click, for example, on a specific company, you can have some infos about when it has been funded, where it is, the funding, the headcount, the total identified customers. And if you click again, you will see a full card of the company with the estimated revenue, the content addressing industry, the known industry they work in, the known partnerships, right? And also like some headcount, some other elements that are important, number of features, number of patents, if they have privacy-specific features included or not, and also how much their blog, how much they reach community, and by there. So if at some point some data is not directly perfect, or if you are this company and actually you want update the data to be sure it's accurate, you can have update the company infos, and we will be glad to update the data accordingly. So this is a landscape you can find on API landscape.apiscene.io on our media platform. You will be able to add your own tool if you're not referenced yet. You will be able to download the map in a PDF file, so you can print a great poster. You will be able to download the report I will be presenting right now, or you will be able even to search a specific company, right? And you will be able to, whatever, from all this company here, you will be able to, for example, when you will look for IBM API Management, you will be able to find the different companies. So yeah, I hope it will be insightful. Either you are an API product manager who wants to know all the tools available on a specific use case, either you are an investor trying to understand the API industry landscape, a manager technical leader, yes, this landscape is for you. It's free and accessible for all this information is provided by Apidays. So we're really glad to give to the community. So yeah, let's go back about now some explanation about how the landscape works. Let's go back to the presentation. So about the presentation, let's say as I said, it can be divided into different sections, like API Lifecycle Platforms, Backend Building Tools, API as a product or business process as a service, Integration Platform as a service, or vertical API abstractions. Let's dive into all of these and see what the numbers we have for you. So as a global aspect, we've checked all the investment that has been made on the global landscape. We reach a $174.5 billion about all the investments. And you'll see that the main investment on the cumulative funding to date is about the API Lifecycle Platforms. This is where we've seen the most investment in the industry. And we can see that of course, it's still huge numbers everywhere, but that's really the main aspect there about the money that has been put. We can see the business process as an API is also an important aspect, but still you can see like the dynamic of investment. So 174.5 billion. It shows that it's when people say API economy will be $1 trillion soon. Yes, it's on the road to go there. It's not there yet, but it's on the road to go there. So about this 1,021 actors, let's say on the number of actors. So most of them are business processes on API. Like we identified more than 1/3 of the landscape. We have also a little bit less than 1/3 on API Lifecycle Platforms. About the numbers, Backend Building Tools were 1/5, like 200. Integration Platform as a service, we identified 148, oh, that's a quick typo here, but like the vertical abstractions, we identified 82. So just to give you a representation. So let's dive into the API Lifecycle Platforms. So if we go on the API Lifecycle Platforms, we can see that out of the 283 tools, we have a lot of consulting companies there, but mostly it's API management and API gateways that represent the main tools, followed by API design and documentation, and also access and identity management. And just to tell you that it seems these three ones are kind of merging. We will see why in another trend we'll explain. But yeah, these top three ones are emerging. We also have specific API testing tools, API security, IoT platforms, analytics, and streaming event architecture and developer portal. So this is the landscape we have identified in the ecosystem. And about funding, as we said, most of the funding is really about API management and API gateways. We see a new trend into API security for funding. But yeah, let's say huge Godzilla here is really the API management and API gateway, where others are more like specific features or specific part of the landscape. This is why you can see investment around $1 billion, but the main one is really API management gateway that is really gathering all of them. Few new players, new challengers. We would just want to present, like Syncedia, for example, is a new API management coming from South America, expanding. Postman, the famous tool for testing APIs that now is a full API Lifecycle Platform, or Pronovix, a company building developer portal as a service directly there. So few examples about new challengers in this industry. About backend building tools, again, we identified almost 200 products. 60 are really infrastructure, cloud, serverless API. 54 are just about banking and finance and insurance backends. Like they're really focused on this narrow, quite big, but narrow industry that just banking and insurance. We've seen 32 just API deployment backend building. So not specific targeted to banking, but just like generalist. We have identified almost 30 headless CMS, like API-driven headless CMS, 18 mobile backend as a service, and 16, let's say, API backend for blockchain, for managing different type of blockchains. Again, in funding, we can see that the majority is really about like infrastructure, cloud, and serverless API platforms. But we can see that the fintech has really been pushing the investment into like banking insurance backends with a $3.2 billion investment. We can see that other are still relevant. It's almost $1 billion. But again, it's really about infrastructure for all or infrastructure for banking that really lead the investment of the industry. Few examples here about new players and challengers. Cloudflare Workers, like with a huge number of new products delivered to manage availability and infrastructure directly as an API, like mostly for streaming. LuxHub, let's say banking backend that was first a developer portal and now a big backend for open banking. Or Strapi Headless CMS that just raised like I think $60 million recently as an open source project, but like enabling a headless CMS directly API driven. If we go on APIs as a product and business API as a service, so here we have identified like 375, but actually there are thousands. But we just try to find the top ones that were the ones that are more relevant. And you can see that, of course, it's quite fragmented because we see lots of different segments there, from audio, accounting, like human resources, or search engines, or time and calendar planning. So there are really many out there. As I say, there are thousands identified. But let's say, as we can see here, we put 88 in email messaging and communication platform, 62 in payments. It's just or 21 in identity verification and KYC. It's just that we see that it's really about business processes or transactional APIs or business processes that are now a small piece of the big value chain that are now delivered directly by an API. So every internal processes that the company is having is at some point delivered via an API by a third party. So again, KYC, payment, forms, e-commerce, selling, search engines, whatever, communication, SMS, like all these pieces are really shared at a large level. And you can see about the funding aspect, you can see that, again, based on the number we picked, but we can see that payments and transactional email messaging communication platform as a service are really the two big enabler of this community. And actually they showed the way, especially to companies. Stripe for payments and Twilio for SMS and communication showed how to others how you can build a sustainable business just doing one business process as a service, delivering by an API to be consumed by everyone who needs it. So they showed us the way, and now a lot of companies are followed. So a few examples here: Twilio for communication, Algolia, also known for search engines as an API, or Primary AI. It's a natural language processing API. But again, it's one business process, one transactional process that can be delivered as an API. And this is the huge trend we see on this, let's say, as a service economy. Fourth is the integration platform as a service, or sometimes called Ipass. So you can see we have identified 145 products. Especially, we found 96 API aggregator just for finance and banking. Recent regulations have obliged banks, at least in a lot of part of the world, to open APIs. And you can see that, a lot of startups have actually built aggregators to be able to find them and integrate with them in just one API. We've seen also a lot of automation and orchestration, like platforms that enable to be a low-code or no-code platform where non-technical developers, non-technical background managers can mix API and make value out of orchestrating APIs. We've seen also others like database as a service or generalist API aggregators, like integration platform as a service that enable to integrate whatever type of APIs. And again, on the funding, it's really the automation and orchestration that is really leading, because it's quite capital intensive to integrate all of these APIs, followed by the API aggregators in finance, who really showed the opportunity to aggregate APIs from open banking. Last but not least is the vertical API abstractions and API aggregators. So vertical API abstractions, again, is just one API for one industry, like that try together abstract one specific use case. It's not like quite generalist, it's really for one use case. Like, for example, we have identified in healthcare, in marketing analytics, in login and in finance, in delivery, transport, logistics, smart homes, domotic, cloud storage. There are, again, many others, but we found these ones were the more relevant. And you can see that about funding, again, finance is really about the majority, and login and security is extremely also important. So again, you can see these numbers about how the market is evolving. Few examples here. You can see the Human API. Human API is a health data API for people to manage their health data. Okta is another example of a security, identity, and login API. That's how I've been there. Or Segment, a great company about making one API just for marketing analytics that has been acquired by Twilio for $3.2 billion recently. Again, as these vertical API abstractions. So let's see what are the trends we see. What are the trends we see there, and the strategic takeaways you can take from this API industry landscape. Again, this landscape is available to download, but let's see actually what's really the takeaways we can have together. So API management has become a commodity, leading to new open source growth. That's one of the main things I think we've seen in this landscape. So market research agencies estimate that the market was $1.8 billion in 2020, but they estimate that the market will be like by almost $14 billion by 2028. That's almost a compound annual growth rate of 28%. That's quite huge. But it's weird because we see more and more commoditization of API management. We see like more and more competition and more open source players. So why does that happen? And actually, this is what we explain in the next 5 trends. First, we've seen a recent consolidation of the market players. This is a quick landscape of all the acquisition. For the one who knows the song, it's the woman who swallowed the fly, and then they swallow the spider to catch the fly, and then she swallowed the cat to catch the spider to catch the fly, and you understand the idea, right? It's a funny song. You can listen. But yeah, that's the idea. A lot of companies acquired other companies that has been acquired again by other companies. So we see a huge consolidation. That shows kind of the market, some maturity on the market. Big software players have gathered value proposition by acquiring new players. So you see kind of a consolidation of the market. An important aspect, the biggest acquisition was really MuleSoft by Salesforce. The acquisition of MuleSoft by Salesforce for $6.5 billion. So that's huge. But it's weird to see that other acquisitions were not at a huge amount. It seems that API management was not an outstanding growth at some time. For example, Google acquired Apigee for $625 million. CA Technology used to acquire Layer 7 for less than $200 million. And other companies here were in the like 20 to 100 million range. So the big idea of the API management market was not directly found happening into the value of acquisition. And this is also one of the reasons is that now we've seen new open source API management providers. So we give you a quick representation of the main one. So Gravity, Kong, Nginx, Solo, 3Scale by Red Hat, Tyke, or WSO2. Some players were older than others, but again, let's say some players have found that the only way to take new market shares will be to be open source, to be able to collect like a wider distribution, to have a wider distribution channel, despite like fighting hard for the big customers. And most of the time when you see a big open source flourishing companies, it means that the previous market is either too much about rent and milking cows, so they try to kill that rent. But that also shows that the previous market is almost commoditized. There's no specific new features, and now the main opportunity is just to release the knowledge in the public domain and enable people to own it. So this is what we see, and again, I invite you to discover more these open source challengers. So the trend number one we see on top, of this main idea that API management is being commoditized, is the explosion of tech regulation set to impact on the API industry. You may be familiar with few of them. Let's say the first one that has a huge impact has been really the Payment Service Directive, like PSD2, as we sometimes we mention it. And so the PSD2 regulation has obliged banks to open APIs on account information and payment initiation. That was an obligation for all European banks. And actually, this regulation has been followed by many countries. So UK was having the same type of regulation in the same time, but by Australia, by Singapore, by India, by Mexico, by many other places in the world are having this same type of regulation. New also countries are having this new regulation coming. So yeah, in this industry, and this is why we've seen in the landscapes why we have so many tools dedicated to banking and open banking. It's because regulation obliged to open APIs specific into that industry. A second industry where regulation is having a lot of impact is the healthcare industry. So especially in the US, we have the HL7 FHIR standard. You have what they call the SMART application, the standard for interoperability. And now, recently, midsummer, health records have joined the API economy as new rules to go live. Just to tell you, healthcare in the US is really powered by API regulation, and also it's coming in UK and in other places of the world to begin to talk about APIs directly as an enabler, indirectly in the regulation. A third regulation that is pushing a lot about APIs is the GDPR, so General Data Protection Regulation. Again, a European regulation that has been followed by many countries in the world. So now we have the GDPR UK, we have the LGPD in Brazil, we have the PIPL in China. We have also in the US, we have the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act. We have the COLO-PA for Colorado, the VCDPA for Virginia. So you can see this huge explosion of regulation about data protection. Even this regulation does not directly talk about APIs. They talk about the ability to transfer data from one service to another, to one controller to another, via machine-readable format. Machine-readable, portability. You understand that APIs are at stake there. Again, the fact the word API is not directly mentioned, let's say companies did not all invest into APIs, but just to say that it's really a large trend. And also, analysts estimate that by the end of 2023, more than 60 countries will have adopted a GDPR-like regulation covering 2/3 of the world population. So it's coming, it's regulation-led. It involves APIs on banking, healthcare, personal data in all sense, in whatever cross-industry. So that's really a trend that you need to consider to understand the evolution of the API industry landscape. Also, recently, the US just passed the Access Act. It's an act that fights for interoperability, that explicitly mentions APIs there to be able to transfer data from one service to the other via interoperability. So Europe, US, China with the PIPL, the Personal Information Protection Law, it's coming. It's coming definitely, and it's a trend we will be following in the next years. The trend two, as we said, the industry is being commoditized. We have regulation that obliges you to use APIs. So one way to get margin back is to make industry-specific solution to emerge in the industry which are regulated: banking, government, insurance, and healthcare, for example. So this is what we see. You will see in the landscape some specific backend tools or API aggregators are directly targeted to banking or to insurance. You can see, you will be able to see it in the figure 3 of the report. And few examples to showcase, like some companies are just dedicated to API management for banking. Yapili, a company, just raised 51 million, or TrueLayer raised 70 million just in API management for open banking. So again, you can understand that you can have specific features dedicated to that industry. One of the API management vendor, Axway, has piloted an open banking platform in Brazil, like just purely an API banking platform, as they were an API management company only before. Gravity, another provider, received accreditation to integrate financial-grade APIs into their solution, FAPI. Again, so you can see the specific specialization. Another example, WSO2 received funding from Goldman Sachs to extend their banking and finance specific open source feature set. So you can see that the next margin is really about like having specific features targeted to specific industries. Banking is an example. Another example is the Open Insurance. So I invite you to discover the Open Insurance Initiative. It has been led over the last few years. And the goal of the Open Insurance Initiative is to orchestrate the opening and the building and the consumption of APIs into the insurance market. Again, so some specific solutions are being made dedicated to that industry, and communities merging around open insurance. A third trend we see based on the landscape is that API security is now a standalone product. And the privacy, we will see that privacy is actually the next differentiation maker beyond security. So we used to see API security as part of API management. All API management solutions handle security, policy management, and the fact that the gateways are actually enabling to do access control and authorization management. All the API security management, the API management platform, handle security. But recently, over the last few years, we've seen what we call the DevSecOps approach. So you may know the DevOps approach, when developers and ops operations are put in the same, let's say, environment. So what you develop can be put in production easily without the need of checking what has been made and if we see some dependencies or stuff like that. The goal was to put security into this DevOps culture, into these DevOps processes. So we have to put security as code. And so that's the idea of putting security and directly into the code idea. And so this is why we've seen more and more security to be an important topic, more and more separated from main management solution. Security is a specific approach, specific department that, even if managed by API management solution, has still its own like realm inside the companies. One of the other reason we've seen why security is now a standalone product is that we've seen, unfortunately, we have the whole world has been hit by COVID. Many employees has to work remotely, and a lot of companies has to adopt digital transformation really rapidly, and sometimes too rapidly, to do it in a way that's really secure. So a new generation of product are able to check your API security issues and help you to resolve them. And so this is why also the big stress on the infrastructure security, because of the rapidity of let's say going fully digital, is also one aspect that makes API security a specific industry. You can see here the different digital adoption by industry over the last few years, and you can see that it has been really big, and COVID-19 actually helped this to make it happen. So you can see in the landscape some API security companies, here targeted, and which just are, they could have, sometimes they are made by previous API management vendors, but they could have been part of the API management platforms. But again, as we said, the pressure of the post-COVID, let's say, digitalization, the fact that security is now a standalone department and practice inside companies, enable this new generation of API security tools. But you can see some companies like recently raised a huge amount of money just on that topic, like a no-name security or salt traceable WIB. We can see also other companies like 42Crunch. These companies raised between 20 and 50 million just this year, because it's the next big thing. It's coming, and you have to be prepared to see API security as a standalone market segment. The trend number 4 that we see is that API are a new layer of business and tech infrastructure. I love to quote Jeff Lawson, CEO of Twilio, that was speaker in one of our last conferences. The world is getting broken down into APIs. Every part of the stack of the business that the developer might need to build is eventually turning into APIs that a developer can use. So this is the as a service economy. Our digital infrastructure is split into thousands of services that can be orchestrated directly via APIs. And I love to use that picture to represent that. You can see here the whole industrial revolution. You can see here 100 years of maturity of the automotive market, where car manufacturers used to do the car themselves. Everything was done internally, so they were managing the whole supply chain. But as the market of car grew, there were more and more opportunity for new players to build few parts of the car that will be integrated, embedded into the cars of car manufacturers. And you can see here that now a car manufacturer does not build all the pieces. He just assembles them, but he does not build all. He has 100 suppliers or hundreds or suppliers, sometimes 200, 500 of suppliers that will build one or few pieces of the car. So he is able to assemble them. And the main role today of a car manufacturer is to design the car, make the early engineering, then orchestrate an ecosystem of manufacturers about like what's needed, how they are needed, and when they are needed, and at what cost, and then assemble the car and to then market it and sell it to the final customers. But let's say the manufacturing is completely decentralized because the market of cars is huge. What does that tell us for digital infrastructure? It's the same. We used to do application ourselves. We used to do all the features and all the business processes, all the transactions in our own applications. But as the market of application grew, we have more and more business processes as a service or APIs, transactional APIs that we're able to integrate so we can focus on our core value proposition. Our goal as a company is just to design the application, design the value proposition, then manage the orchestration of different APIs on the market, assemble them into a final product to be delivered again to our users, maybe, or to other developers via an API that will also assemble them in their product. And you can see the digital supply chain that we're building all together. So yes, you can see here in the landscape, you can see here the trend number 4, like with the business process as a service and API product. As I said earlier, we had identified almost 400 tools or business process as a service. But again, there are thousands there. There are really thousands. We just took the most representative because, it will completely override the full landscape. Few notable companies here: Stripe for payments, like valuated at $105 billion. Twilio, recent valuation was $60 billion. Adyen, payment API 2, $20 billion. Plaid, an API aggregator, $13 billion. SendGrid, an email transaction API, $2 billion. Avalara, a tax calculation API, $15 billion. So you can imagine, you can see that actually you can be one small piece of the value chain, but if you are embedded and integrated into everyone else's website or application, you can accumulate a lot of value. It's weird, but we're in a world where the pieces manufacturers can be bigger than the automotive manufacturers. Just imagine you have just a tire company that's worth as much as 2 or 3 times all the car manufacturers. This is what we see. Stripe is a payment API, but they're worth more than actually lots and lots of banks. And sometimes, for example, the top European bank is worth less on valuation that Stripe. And Stripe is just the payment provider where banks used to do payments, and not only this, but just to tell you how you can accumulate value in this new API economy. We see it on the business side, but also on the infrastructure side, on the technical side. So this is an example. Here about a few standards that now are kind of pushed to standardize the technical stack about building APIs internally. The Open API initiative has been really one important one, but async API, gRPC, JSON schema, GraphQL, Vulkan, are also standards about how we communicate the design of APIs, or how APIs can be described, or how APIs can be triggered and pulled directly. So it seems that we are having this huge business stack outside, but also internally on the infrastructure, how services talk together, how microservices talk together, how the service mesh is being orchestrated, is also being standardized and decomposed into APIs and services that manage together. So It's networked in the inside. You have smaller services that communicate with each other via APIs internally in the stack of the company. And then you have public APIs here to provide the capabilities to others that will orchestrate them into the value proposition. It's a huge value chain. It's a value chain internally, then to be delivered publicly, to be a value chain externally to others. That's a big change. And this extreme division of work is really the main trend that we see. You may know the famous quote from Silicon Valley. There is only two business models, bundling or unbundling. And we are definitely in an unbundling era where all the monolith of the past, all the big players and all the big software monolith are being cut into smaller services that communicate via APIs. So definitely we're in an unbundling era. And we can see that actually unbundling can have a lot more value than a sum of its previous parts. And the company we've seen earlier, Stripe, Twilio, ADN, Avalara, are demonstrating it. This is an example here about the banking as a service stack. You can see that they even represented the Lego bricks, but again, all the companies are actually providing one brick that can be assembled to finally build more applications. So it can be a debit card, it can be tracking, it can be deposit management, card issuing, card lending, whatever. And then you can completely rebuild the bank with just the unbundled services that are out there and that different companies are building. Last but not least, trend number 5, it's the low code and the growth of citizen developers enabled by APIs. So you'll be able to see in the report in figure 8, the low code automation tools, that enable non-developers to use and orchestrate APIs together. Few notable tools are there. So Zapier is a famous tool where you build zaps. You make recipes between different services, between different APIs. You're able to assemble really, really easily, a few clicks. Retool is another example, which is a low-code platform to build internal apps, being able to orchestrate with public APIs and external API services. We also have AppSheet, that has been acquired by Google, $2 billion. Just to say, like Google Cloud, who acquired Apigee, has also acquired AppSheet as a low-code platform, just to tell you how they see in API management this trend of the citizen developers, the non-technical developers, but that still wants to build valuable application, mixing the different value proposition enabled by APIs. And you can see another example, Gravity, but have a specific drag and drop API design workflow. Again, in this idea of low code or no code, and the ability of non-technical developers, citizen developers, to use APIs and to make value out of API mixing. The driver of this, then we have identified 4 drivers. The first one is that IT infrastructure has been in need to prioritize digital modernization project. So this is why when it's the buy versus build, either we have to rebuild it if we can buy a solution, directly integrate it into our platform so we have the feature without the burden, let's do it. An example I use often is TransferWise. They do money transfer, but now banks prefer using TransferWise than sometimes their internal money transfer capabilities because they are too slow or too old or too expensive. So they use a third party that does their job instead of them. Internal APIs already exist. So the goal is you can just expose them to be orchestrated and enable non-developers to use it. The SaaS tools also now open their APIs. So every user of a SaaS tool now can also mix APIs together. And most of the time, SaaS is made for non-developers. Now, the API orchestration is also made non-developers. The last one is really the speed of customer demand, also push for APIs to be open and to be orchestrated. So this is, we just achieved the end of the presentation of the state of the API industry 2022. So based on the 1,000 companies we have identified, the key summary are API management market is growing fast, but becoming a commodity, creating open source communities and open source companies that are actually quite booming. Regulation are enforcing the publishing and the use of APIs, creating new opportunities. And actually, these opportunities are the specialization of API management. toward these specific new industries: banking, healthcare, supply chain, insurance, and others. Because of the rapid post-COVID digitization, API security is no standalone product, and privacy is the next wave of these API tools. Security is now a standalone product because of company culture, but because also of the current funding and the current need of having API security reinforcement on top of API management. Last two, APIs are the new business infrastructure for as-a-service digital infrastructure, but also the new technical stack. Even internally, we cut monolith into different services that can be orchestrated by APIs. And last but not least, citizen developers are the next wave of API users and consumers. When you build API for developers, you also now have to think how I can build APIs for non-developers, citizen developers, to orchestrate my value proposition and be able to build application. That was for me. Again, I hope it opens the day the way you want. This is the State of the API Industry 22. We will be sharing the report. We will send the report to all attendees as the thank you email with the link to the landscape, so you're able to browse it on apilandscape.apiscene.io. Yeah, and